In this video, I'm going to address some questions that we often get asked in our trainings. The first question is, can I split the lesson into 2 days? We've had teachers in the past who delivered the decoding portion one day and the encoding portion the next day. What happened? They didn't get the results they expected at the end of the year. One reason was that by choosing to split lessons into 2 days, they were only able to get through half of the lessons on the scope and sequence. Another reason is that the decoding and encoding portions support each other. So when you're keeping both parts together, students are applying the new and previously learned skills in several multisensory ways at one time. When there is a gap between teaching the two portions, young children tend to forget what they reviewed and what they learned new in the decoding portions when it comes time to apply it to encoding. You may need to provide another warm-up of sounds through the visual drill and reteach the new skill before students begin encoding. We have had teachers who have split the lessons into decoding and encoding, but delivered them on the same day, just at different times. This is a better option than separating them into 2 days. However, it's not ideal. The decoding and encoding portions support each other, as mentioned previously, and you may find you need to provide review before beginning the encoding portion. So the ideal situation, if possible, is to teach a full lesson on the same day and at the same time. The next question, can I move lesson components around? Our lessons are set up as a part-to-whole model, moving from smaller units to larger units. You can see here, the blue arrows represent decoding. We begin with reading sounds in the visual drill, then moving to reading words, and finally to reading a passage. That's all part of decoding. We have the fluency passage at the end of the lesson, but that can be moved to right after new words. The red arrows represent the encoding portions. We start with spelling sounds, to spelling words, and finally, to applying what we've learned to writing a sentence. We want to keep these components in that order. The phonemic awareness activities are skills that can be moved around if they are not related to the new skill. Another question, do I need to follow the sequence of new concepts listed in the scope and sequence? In an OG lesson, concepts move from simple to more complex, reviewing and building upon previously taught materials. The scope and sequence intentionally orders prerequisite skills and groups related concepts. If you are using our scope and sequence and you choose to change the order of the skills, there are many things to think about before you do so. Look to see if you are moving a more complex skill before introducing a simple or prerequisite skill. Then, look at all of the components in a lesson to make sure there is nothing unfair that has not been previously taught to students. This includes looking at the memory words and the words in the sentence dictation. Feel free to contact us if you have any doubts. The next question, do we need to keep our card decks and memory words in the exact order as stated in the lesson plan? The answer is no. So if you look at the visual drill box in the lesson on the screen, you'll see that there are basic cards listed. However, when you are delivering the visual drill, you don't want to keep those cards in that order. You want to shuffle them up daily. If you keep them in the same order every day, kids will memorize that order and not look at the cards. It's the same with the memory word cards. When you're delivering the flash deck of previously taught memory words, shuffle them up before you practice them with your students. Does it really take 45 minutes to deliver a lesson? When delivering a lesson in a whole class setting, it will take approximately 45 minutes. The attached table gives you an idea of how much time we spend on components and how it changes as new components are added throughout the year. In the beginning lessons, we are focusing on procedures of the different components. When students become automatic with procedures, they can focus all their mental energy on learning new content and reviewing previously learned content. Another question, is 45 minutes overwhelming for kindergarten students? When we think of 45 minutes as one big lesson, that would seem a long time. But if you look at this pacing guide, it's not one big lesson. It's actually several mini lessons within those 45 minutes. Our lessons begin in a meeting area, such as on a rug. And during that time, we're working on several mini lessons using different multisensory techniques that are resetting students' brains each time. And in between the mini lessons, students are physically moving from one area to another, where again, they're resetting their brains. So during that 45-minute block, they are constantly learning different components using different multisensory techniques, as well as physically moving. This will help keep the students from becoming fatigued or overwhelmed. Now I'm going to address some student response sheet questions and handwriting questions. The first one is, why is it important to have students repeat names, sounds, and words after the teacher? So let's think about the auditory drill. Here's an auditory drill from a lesson and an SRS form. We always ask students to repeat letter names, sounds, or words. We want to make sure that they're hearing and saying them correctly before they say them again while writing them on their paper. So you're checking, did they say it right? If not, then you need to say it again. Also, it's very important for students to say the letter names, sounds, or words as they write them on their SRS. Whether they're doing the auditory drill, new spelling, or memory words, we want students to repeat what the teacher has provided, then repeat it again as they write it. This helps to build those pathways in the brain using multisensory techniques. Next question. I'm concerned about starting the SRS with my kindergarten students at the beginning of the year. Shouldn't I wait until their handwriting improves? The majority of kindergarten students will not be able to write letters perfectly at the beginning of the year. That doesn't mean we should wait until their handwriting improves before having them complete an SRS form. The goal of the SRS section is for students to hear a letter name or sound, retrieve the image of that letter name or sound, then form the letter on their paper. It's not about correct handwriting formation here. It's about retrieving the information that they've learned. So the sooner we start having them fill out the SRS form on their own, the more automatic and accurate they will be with the skills being taught. We teach letter formation in our lessons through very explicit and multisensory steps while students are learning letter names and sounds. It's about 2 to 3 minutes of practice, which may be enough for some students, but the majority will need to have daily, short formation practice outside the OG block. So when you have them write on the SRS form, it will be bumpy at first, but just be patient and know that the more they practice, the better they will become. Next question. How do I support students who are frustrated with completing an SRS form? You will probably have a student who, even with explicit letter formation instruction, will become frustrated and overwhelmed with writing on the SRS. Some students are perfectionists, and they want it to be perfectly formed on their paper. Others just truly need more practice with letter formation, or they are not able to retrieve the image of that letter in their brain. They hear the name of it, but they can't remember what it looks like. They hear the sound, and again, they don't connect it to the image. So if you have a student that is openly struggling, you can use a highlighter or marker and fill in the answers on an SRS prior to the lesson. Encourage those students to trace over the letters as they say them, but make sure that they stay with you and not work ahead. You want them to move quickly away from this, though, because you don't want it to become a crutch. Fill out less of the SRS form until they are able to complete it independently. For the student who is struggling with handwriting, be sure to spend more time with them practicing letter formation in small doses so they can build up their skills and confidence. Next question. Do I need to model the SRS form for everyone to see all year long? Yes, it's very important to have you or a student model an SRS on a screen the entire year. We want students to get immediate feedback so they can reinforce that what they are doing is correct, or be able to correct any errors they make. Remember, the SRS is not a quiz or a test. It is another part of multisensory practice for students to remember new information that they are learning. Another question we get is, what is the best way to make sure students are not just copying from the teacher's SRS? At first, we are writing the answers along with the students. This is because they are just learning procedures and content and need that immediate response. As they become more automatic with procedures and content, you can start pausing before writing the answers. What this may look like is the teacher says the response. Students repeat. The teacher watches for most students to begin writing their answers on their SRS. Then the teacher writes his or her answer so students can check their work. There is just a slight delay as students write and the teacher models. Next question. Any suggestions of how I can use an SRS each day without having to use paper, which is limited in our building? Many teachers will put the SRS sheet in clear page protectors and have students use the skinny dry erase markers to write on them. We advise doing this for a few days, but also having students complete a couple of days using a paper and pencil method. You can then collect them and check for errors or handwriting issues that you need to address with students. This last topic is a memory word question. Do I need to teach the memory words that are in the lessons, or can they be changed to match my district's words? A quick answer is yes, you can change words to match your district's. But I want to give you some information to help you decide which words would be appropriate to teach in your lessons. Let's take a look at the words that we use in our lessons. In kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, we use the Fry word lists. On the screen are Fry's first 100 words that we teach in kindergarten. The words have been color-coded to help explain how we use them in our lessons. The red words are words that are irregular. This means they can't be decoded. There are no rules or patterns that we can teach students to help them sound them out, so we include them in our lessons. The green words are words that will be fair by the end of kindergarten, when all of the skills have been taught. We teach some of these words in our lessons because the patterns are not fair at the time that we teach them. For example, the word and. We include this word in our lessons because students have not been explicitly taught all the sounds in the word when it comes up on the list. The numbers that are highlighted in blue and green are fair words that are decodable by the time they would come up in our lessons. So if students have the skills to sound out these words, then there's no reason for us to explicitly teach them. Therefore, we didn't include them in our lesson. The words that are not highlighted are words that will eventually be fair and decodable in first and second grade, when the patterns in these words are taught. But since we don't teach those patterns in kindergarten, those words are added to our lessons. Let's take a look at this information and apply it to the high-frequency words that are used in many districts. Generally, words that are included in a district's high-frequency words are based on the stories that students read in their core reading programs. Something you should consider is looking at those words and asking yourself some questions. How frequently do those words come up in other stories that kindergarten students read at this age? Are the words decodable by the time you would add them to your lesson? If so, then those words would not need to be included in your lessons if they can already decode them. Are the words irregular words or red words? Do they have patterns that are not decodable? Or is it that students don't have rules to help them read them? Those would be words you would want to include in your lessons. Are there patterns in those words that you don't directly teach in kindergarten? Then again, those would be words you would want to include in your lessons. Hopefully, this information will help you to decide which of your district's words should be taught explicitly in your lessons. This concludes the frequently asked questions portion of our training.